All right, Steve Bamford is here, the final major of the year. I can't believe it's already upon us. How are you doing, my friend? This is your favorite one, wouldn't you say?
Well, I love the Open. Prefer the Masters, if I'm being frightfully honest. But the Open. I mean, to me, it's on the pedestal with the Masters, just slightly above the USO and the PGA, lagging probably in fourth place. But I think we're going to get an Open Championship that's slightly different this year, just with the fantastic weather we've had over here in the UK. Red hot, very, very dry. So we can get into the detail around that.
I agree. Before we dive in, I like to spend 5 to 7 minutes recapping the last major, what we got right, what we got wrong. What was your final take on Oakmont after watching that? What happened with Bryson, by the way?
Well, I think it all ended up a little bit too. I mean, JJ Spawn at the end of the day. You mentioned in the podcast something along the lines of
Mac.
Well, you could take the 25 most accurate and the 25 longest and build something around that. I know Spawn wasn't that, but actually, if you looked at his off the tee numbers, his total driving numbers, he was one of these guys that wasn't the longest. He was kind of mid-length, but iron straight. And as we know with Spawn, very, very nuggety individual. So you can kind of see it, but blew so many trends in terms of, the usual spiel around top tens and major history going in. But I think he was clearly the deserved winner. Clearly a step forward also for Bob McIntyre, as you alluded to there. That's the first time he's really felt the white heat of contending in, on a Sunday in a major, and he withstood it very well. I also thought Tyrrell Hatton took quite a lot of, from a UK perspective, I think Hatton's performance showed a lot of maturity and just showed that he's rising a level as well.
Yeah, that's going to cross over into the Portrush market with Hatton. I've already seen quite a bit of steam there. Bob Mack at 110 to 1 at the US Open. I felt like really had a moment there when, everybody had to get back onto the course when it was still brutal, rainy conditions, and everybody at the top of the leaderboard seemed to be going backwards. And Bob Mack was the only one staying steady at +1. Although I knew when JJ Spawn hit the fairway on the 18th hole that, the 18th at Oakmont, it's really interesting because if you hit the fairway, it's an incredibly straightforward hole and not an easy par, but you're more often going to make par if you hit the fairway on the 18th at Oakmont than any other score. Whereas if you miss the 18th at Oakmont, the scoring average is above a bogey, right? So you're like just as likely to make par from the rough as you are to make double for the rough, and you're often lucky to get out of there with bogey. When Spawn hit the fairway, he ended up making that bomb of a putt. I think he would have two-putted it. He was the right winner. He's the right winner. Yeah. So, I mean, let's dive right in because there's a ton for us to get to today. I'm in upstate New York at my dad's lake cottage with my recording equipment. There difficulties on that end technologically already this morning. So that's my fault. Steve has been perfection as always for these podcasts. So hopefully you can forgive me if my audio isn't quite the microphone professionality that you are used to. But I will make up for it in my research. I spent a lot of time last night on Portrush. Like I stayed up deep into the hours of the night trying to figure out this golf course. And I feel like I have a great sense of it. I'm just curious to see how your ideas compare to mine. So, start me big picture, Steve. When you think about Portrush, what are the first things that come to mind?
I wouldn't say it's long, but it's approaching 7,400 yards, which for a lot of open courses,
it's long.
It's pretty long. Yeah, so they're quoting.
They added, by the way, 100 yards from last year, and the vast majority of that yardage went to the hardest holes on the golf course, like 18 and 4.
Yeah, they're quoting 7.381. So par 71, I'd categorize that as kind of medium length, but it's a Harry Colt original. Martin Abert, he's worked on it 2017. I think he's been involved in some of these 23, 24 revisions.
He is completely involved in the 2023 revisions. And we should also mention that he's kind of the modern Open doctor now. He made revisions to Troon, Liverpool. Actually, Harry Colt as well has had his hand in he's had his hand actually in some Liverpool revisions and some Muirfield revisions as well. So there's some crossover. I'll talk about the Open venues that I think Portrush is most like, but continue on Colt.
They've definitely added length to the 4th hole, which they classify as Fred Daly's. They've done some work around some of the greens as well. So apparently on the 1st, Huey's, they've done some work to the left portion of the green. So they've got an extra additional pin position in there. And they've also done a whole new rebuild of the 7th green complex, which is Curran Point. That's the par 5 that runs along the coast.
Yes.
With the huge towering sand dunes on the right-hand side. They've basically softened the contours of that particular par 5 green. But in all intents and purposes, I think a lot of the work they've done is just to extend the actual facility, make the practice range a lot better, make it more of an Open Championship sized venue that can cope with the crowds and with all the infrastructure and with all the players. But to all intents and purposes, I don't think the actual challenge of the course and the way that the course works has changed since 2019. As per every Open Championship venue, this week is all going to be mission critical around those weather conditions and also the turf conditions, the firmness of the golf course. In terms of the actual agronomy itself, we are looking at just typical mix of fescue, bent grass and meadow grass for both the fairways and the rough. The greens are 5,400 square feet, which aren't huge, and they feature fescue grass. I also saw one piece of information I found quite interesting. They're quoting 2 inches for the rough length. They're also quoting that the rough length either side of each fairway is managed at that 2 inches for 6 yards either side of the fairway. And from that point on, you're into all manner of Open Championship brush, fescue, the usual carnage that you get off fairways on links golf courses. So yeah, you're kind of looking at this 6 yard strip either side of each fairway. The actual fairways themselves, I saw them quoted. I think it was 28 yards wide, something along those lines, 25 to 28. So pretty tight, not overly tight, but pretty tight.
Yeah, I everything you're saying, agree wholeheartedly. One thing I want to say about Royal Portrush, this is again kind of macro stuff, and then we'll get a little bit more specific about what exactly we're looking for. Andy Johnson brought this point up in a Fried Egg podcast about Portrush, so I want to properly credit him. But what's interesting about Portrush, I think, to remember and keep in mind, is that most of the golf courses on the Open Championship Rota were designed in 1700, 1800, 1850s, late 19th century. And Royal Portrush was designed in 1933. And it was designed by Harry Colt, as you mentioned, who many believe is the GOAT. I mean, many believe that Harry Colt, if not one of the most influential architects of all time, but truly in the golden age, Steve, Harry Colt is responsible for most of the great golf courses in England. I mean, he truly has designed, Harry Colt has designed the best golf courses in England, the best golf courses in Canada, He played a major role in designing Pine Valley, which is the greatest golf course in America. And he's also, laid his hands on some of the greatest Scottish and links UK Ireland courses, like Muirfield as well, and Royal Liverpool. And Harry Colt, in the 1930s, this is the peak of the golden age era where, Tillinghast is coming forward. CB McDonald and Seth Rayner are coming forward. And this was the era where golden age designers really learned how to design complex and undulating greens, with Harry Colt being a huge part of the influence. So some of these golf courses like St. Andrews and Muirfield, Liverpool, Carnoustie, some of the golf courses that were designed, in the 1800s, a lot of them have not necessarily flat, but they don't have complex, subtle undulations in the way that Portrush does. Portrush has incredibly designed greens. And so I do think it's very different from other venues where it has small and undulating greens. A lot of links courses have big, wide, expansive greens. These greens are 5,500 square feet, and they have a lot of slope to them, a lot of slope to them. So if it's running firm and fast, putting is going to be very, very difficult. You want a lot of putting skill on this golf course. Final thing I'll say, and then I'm going to kick it back to you for your reaction. This is an aerial golf course. A lot of links golf courses, the greens sit flat to the fairways, and Royal Portrush has a tremendous amount of raised greens where you need to fly the ball up there. I never thought that I would be saying this at an Open Championship venue, but particularly with the wind laying down, this is more of an apex height. I mean, you want to be able to hit the ball high and have it stopped on these raised greens. And final thing, because I want to get your response to all of it. Does it have this is the third reason why it's distinctive from other Open venues. Doesn't really have as many pop bunkers. It has 56 bunkers on the entire course, which is actually low for some of the other Open Championship rotas. And the real defense around the green of this golf course is the same defense around the green that TPC Sawgrass has. It's moguls. It's humps and hollows and undulations, and around the greens, there's tiny mini collection areas where you have to chip or putt up. And a lot of Open venues, if you're not in a pop bunker, you can use the Texas wedge from anywhere, right? If you're off the green at St. Andrews, you can putt from 50 yards at St. Andrews. At Portrush, you actually have to chip the ball.
Yeah,
you do, because the greens are raised. So I know that was a lot there, but those are kind of the three things that I wanted to get your reaction on that make Portrush unique: is raised greens, moguls around the greens, and internal contouring on the greens make it very distinctive from other Open venues.
I think if you were to break it down into its component parts, agreed. The greens are the star here. That's undoubted. It's in a way far smaller greens, mind you, and a completely different build of green. But at Oakmont, of course, the greens were also the star. So you kind of got that carrying across. The point that you make there about raised greens is very, very, very important. On the Golf Betting System Golf Betting System podcast that we pulled together, we've got my colleague Barry O'Hanrahan played this course last year, and he said that the amount of raised greens that you get here compared to other Irish links courses is a different level. So there's a lot of this situation here.
He's very observant. That's correct.
Where you're going to need, it's not just a case of where you can be in the rough and just run the ball up into the heart of the area. The run, the pitch and run kind of play here can work on some holes, but not on most. So it comes back to actually a test more in the air than on the ground, which isn't your typical Open Championship venue. The other thing I think that's worthy of note, and I've put this on various previews that I've written, and if you look at both the history here going back to pre-2019, so I'm going way back here to before the renovation they made before the 2019 Open. They played the Irish Open here in 2012. So if you just look at that, Jamie Donaldson, the ex-Ryder Cupper, he won that at 18 under. He won that by 4 from Cabrera Bello, Anthony Wall, and Fabrizio Zanotti. Just taking a lot of the information from that, but also information from the Open Championship in 19. For me, it's far better to be straight and accurate off the tee here than length. So it's one of those irregular kind of week-to-week venues this week where accuracy, for me, is far more important around this golf course than driving distance. And if we take Shane Lowry, and if we were to sit down over a pint or a Bud Light, what would you say? What would you say Shane Lowry's strengths are as a player? Well,
accuracy off the tee and elite iron player, and good hands around the green as well. Good chipper.
Absolutely. So I think you're kind of starting to paint a picture here where you can be kind of Brian Harmon-esque from a couple of years ago, where you can be iron straight off the tee, not the longest, but have a good week with your irons and be one of those fantastic scramblers and putters. Or we go down the other route, which kind of follows to Shane Lowry to a certain extent, but you looked at Tommy Fleetwood in the last renewal. Players that can be metronomic with their irons, hit 75% of greens and regulation and the like, and kind of in that way, it would become more of a ball striking and proximity to the hole. Those kind of players could also take a run at this. You've kind of got two camps that could actually contend here, I think. The kind of Magic Beansy, great around the greens, great putters because of these green complexes, but also guys that can find fairways, find greens, a JJ Spawn kind of player that can just grind their way and just navigate the course that way. The kind of I classify those kind of the kind of grinders, the fairways and greens guys, the plotters. I don't think a Bryson DeChambeau kind of player that's blasting it with a laissez-faire attitude and going driver on every hole here. That just doesn't work around Royal Portrush, in my opinion.
Totally agree. A lot to respond to there, but I want to start with the off the tee stuff because I think this is important to note. And often, what players do off the tee and the strategy off the tee is like the number one thing that I look at when I'm breaking down the golf course. So generally, like a little look behind the curtain as to my process, when we have a new golf course like this, the first thing that I do, before I read anything or listen to anything or ask anyone else their opinion, what I just very simply do is I go to Google Earth and I go 1 through 18, hole by hole. Often when it's a golf course that has like the every hole video at Golf Digest, those are awesome. And I kind of cross-reference too. And so, because, those sometimes can really give you better images and video on the character of the hole. Those are in 4D, so you can see the undulations so much better than if you were just looking at Google Earth. But Steve, I answered 3 questions for 18 holes. Question number 1, what is the optimal play? And this is the decade stuff, Scott Fawcett, similar, but what is the strategy off the tee? Is this a driver hole or is this a less than driver hole, right? What are players going to do more often? Number 2, is this a golf hole where it's better for you to be long or straight? right? I try and figure out on each par 4 and par 5, is it better to be long, and can bombers gain a huge advantage here with their distance? Or is this a hole where you just want to find the fairway? Third question, what's the average proximity bucket that players have coming in?
Yeah.
So when I went through all 18 holes of Royal Portrush, of the 14 par 4s and par 5s, it was 10-4 accuracy versus distance. I found 4 holes where I really said to myself, man, if you're a bomber, you can really cut the corner and gain a huge advantage here. And the other 10 holes, it was like, okay, you need to hit the fairway. There is one thing I will say about Royal Portrush. It's not very kind to the big mess. I don't think you need to hit every fairway. And I do think in the top 10, there will at least be 1 or 2 guys that drive the ball long and cut a bunch of corners and score on the par 5s, and give themselves, middle irons in over long irons on the long hole. So I don't want to make it seem like we're talking like a pure accuracy test, like, I don't know, TPC Sawgrass, although TPC Sawgrass is the best American comp for this golf course, particularly around the greens. But I'm totally with you. I had this golf course as more of an accuracy over distance golf course, and I'm not quite exactly sure what the missed fairway penalty is going to be. I'm so fascinated to see how the missed fairway penalty stacks up to other golf courses. But, if you look at, the thick rough and the gorse and stuff at Troon, if it's anything off the fairways like it is at Troon was one of the best tests of accuracy we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years. Troon, if you miss a fairway at Troon, it was a big, big problem for you. And I'm not sure if Portrush off the fairways, I'm curious if you have an opinion on this, is quite as penal as the tall grass at Troon. But there's certainly more humps and hollows. There's certainly more uneven lies. There's certainly more mounding off the fairway. And if you miss big on a number of holes, OB comes into play on 6 or 7 holes significantly, at least off the tee. So I'm with you, Steve. For me, I'm taking accuracy over distance 7 days a week and twice on Sunday, the same way that we talked about at Royal Troon.
If you look at and I was looking into this this morning, actually. If you actually just look at Harman and Xander, I know they're completely 2 different kinds of player. Hoylake was very, very similar with OB on about 7, 8 holes around Hoylake.
By the way, Harry Colt redesign.
Yeah. So if you look at Harman's build up,
I think Hoylake and Royal St. George's, in my opinion, because Royal St. George's is very undulating and aerial.
Yes,
those are the best 2 recent Open comps.
Also, a hell of a lot of mounding around the green complexes there.
At St. George's, 100%. St. Andrews, no value to me here.
No. St. Andrews that's a complete red herring. Harman, before he won, especially on that, he had a little run, didn't he, going along the the John Deere Classics and this kind of thing. Did well at the Scottish Open. People were literally backing him in 200 to 1. I think he was like in the top 4 or 5 going on into Saturday at the Scottish Open the week before. People got onto him very, very quickly. The one thing he was doing really, really well was driving the ball very, very straight. And then if you look at Xander's numbers from last year, he wasn't driving the ball particularly straight, but what he was doing was finding tons and tons and tons and tons of greens in regulation before he won the Open. So there's 2 schools of thought there. Can we find a creative guy around the greens, a great putter that's hitting the drive ball nice and straight? I think that will work here. Interestingly enough, Brian Harman's actually playing very well at the Scottish Open this week. Yeah. So and you'll get a very nice price on Brian Harman, who's literally holding on with his fingernails to a top 12 spot in the Ryder Cup qualification. Just to point out, I found the number. The average fairway width this week at Portrush will be 27 yards,
Do you think those were too narrow for like?
Well, I was going to say that's narrow.
That's narrow. That's the only thing that worries me about favoring. I mean, I'm just like, number one, I just want great overall drivers of the ball. I think this is a golf course where the first shot matters. It does. Like, I am heavier on off, not quite to the level of Oakmont, but I'm heavier off the tee than average.
My gut feel here is, though, 27 yards wide, yes, but don't forget what we were saying there earlier about 2-inch rough around either side of the fairways, which doesn't feel overly penal.
Somewhat graduated, right? Like, the bigger the mess, the more screwed you are. So it still pays to be just in the vicinity of the middle of the fairway on every hole.
We're not going to have an Oakmont situation where we've discussed it, and we did discuss it last time around, where basically you bomb it further, and that's because the shorter players are hitting missing just as many fairways. They're the guys that are getting penalised. I don't see that here. Just to throw to your listeners into a bit of context here, or viewers as well. TPC Deer Run. So we walked out the John Deere Classic last week, didn't we? 36 yards wide, those fairways at 300 yards carry.
Mm-hmm.
So these are 9 yards thinner than that, and we're looking at a 7,400 yard golf course with raised greens in the main, undulating greens, and if you do miss green surfaces, all manner of hollows and runoff areas. It's a tricky test, but my gut feel here is is straighter. Guys with fantastic irons. I'm going to defer to you in terms of what you think key kind of distances around here.
Yeah.
I think you're going to need people with very, very soft hands around here, guys that have got decent scrambling numbers and around the green numbers, or someone that's literally metronomic entering Portrush with their greens in regulation in terms of their long play. So it's a kind of mixture of the two in my mind. And of course, we'll go into this, I'm sure, but for me, I'm always the sort. I know that Colin Morikawa is the guy that breaks all of these trends. But for me, I want players that have got a considerable amount of Open Championship venue history behind them.
Yep. One or two more points on the course, because I do want to talk about some players with you as well, and be cognizant of your time. Just to bolster what you're saying for context, Royal Troon last year, average fairway width 33 yards wide, driving accuracy percentage of 56%. Royal Liverpool, average fairway width 30 yards, driving accuracy percentage of 52%. So if we expect the golf course to be firmish and fastish, and we'll talk about the weather here in a second, because they're getting some rainfall. The driving accuracy percentage, probably 50%. It's probably 50%. And the only thing that I am thinking could make it go higher is I think a lot of players off the tee, you don't need to hit driver on a lot of holes. So I think the driver usage percentage is going to be lower than tour average as well, which may raise the driving accuracy percentage a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I just want to, because I know people like comp courses. For me, and this will transition us into talking about the next question, which is how hard the golf course is going to play and what the scoring average is going to be and what the winning score is going to be. Because I know people love that type of content as well. To me, if you just put all of the Open Championships in neutral conditions, right, and just said, what's the hardest golf course on paper if all the other variables are equal, I would put Portrush pretty high. I think it's going to be very easy, perfect scoring conditions this week. That's going to make it an easy Open Championship. But compared to other Open venues, I think this is a harder golf course in no wind than Liverpool in no wind. I think it's a harder golf course than Royal St. George's. In no wind, if both have no wind, St. Andrews, don't even get me started. Muirfield and Carnoustie, probably maybe a little bit harder than Portrush, but Liverpool and St. George's are the two comps for me. Outside of, I have two American ones, which are Hamilton and Sawgrass, but the two open venues that you want to look at are that 2023 U.S. Open, Open that Harmon won, and the 2019 Open that Morikawa won. And the reason I say St. George's is because that year had pretty pristine scoring conditions. We're going to get that this year as well. And the topography, Royal St. George's has more dunes than a lot of other golf courses. And Royal Portrush is a golf course that is defined by its dunes. So I just wanted to let me ask you a question real quick. Can you tell me between Liverpool and St. George's, who has been the best player, if you combine those two golf courses, Liverpool and St. George's, take out all the other ones?
Who's been the best player? No, I couldn't give you that answer. Who is it?
It's John Rahm, who has a second and third in 2021 and 2023. I'll wheel off the top 10 super quickly. John Rahm, your Brian Harman. That's what you're going to get when you win an Open by 7 strokes. Colin Morikawa, who is the winner of St. George's. But then you have a couple more accurate and aerial players that I have some interest in. Colin Morikawa, Tom Kim, Jordan Spieth, Sepp Straka. Louis is in. 8 is actually Cameron Young. 9 is Victor Hovland. And 10 is Scotty Scheffler. That's it for me. I got the main points on I didn't do proximity buckets, but any response to those comp courses before we dive into the weather?
I think the winning score is going to be, he says, recording this 6 days before.
Yeah, things could change, guys. We're not weathermen.
You get this, don't you? The video. And who was this British bloke who said the winning score would be this when actually it was 19 shots the other way?
We're recording this on Friday. If you consume this on Monday, Tuesday, which I know some people will do, the weather could change
hugely
by miles. Yes.
I think it's going to be around about that kind of 16, 17 under.
Agree. Almost, I would say even 18, but agree.
Yeah, I get that. Because the reason I say that is weather forecast or weather forecast or weather forecast or weather forecast. But when it comes to UK golf, I always follow, and so do my partners in crime, Paul and Barry. We always follow the BBC weather app over here, and they tend to be pretty accurate. I'm looking at Portrush, and I'm seeing there's potentially rain in the build up. When I say rain,
Monday and Tuesday.
Yes, but it's we're looking at like 50% chances, and it's up in the air. I think the course is going to get some moisture on it, but I wouldn't get too into that. I don't think you're going to be turning up on Thursday and it's a soft golf course. I really don't see that. Just knowing what the weather's been like here for like a month. The thing that really interests me more is the fact, I think you're going to get some squally showers and stuff like that. But what do you expect? It's the Open Championship. I think the thing that really, really defines this is just how the wind is laying down according to the forecast across all 4 days.
Steve, there's no wind.
There is no wind. And that opens up that to me opens this up far more than it would be if we saw 2019 type conditions where on the Sunday they were playing in 30 to 35 mile an hour southwesterly winds. That really, for me, gets the field and scrunches it up into a number of players that's very small. This feels a little bit more open in terms of unless this forecast completely changes, wind will not be a factor. But the course's defence will be what the R&A decide to do with the speed of these greens.
Yeah, and the architecture. I think architecturally, this is architecturally and topographically, it's a harder golf course than some of the other recent ones that we've had.
Yeah, I agree. It's whether they want these greens to start releasing over the weekend. I think that will have a big bearing on who wins and also in terms of the winning score, full stop.
Right. So 2019, 2021, how much of that Open Championship in 2021 at St. George's do you remember when, it was Morikawa over Spieth in 2021?
I remember that being a particularly calm, perfect weather condition Open.
Incredibly.
No wind at all.
No wind at all. And that Open was 15 under.
Yep.
Easily could have been 1 at 18 under.
Yeah.
And the scoring average of plus 0.45.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're looking at, if you ask me to make a prediction, I think it's going to be a plus 0.75 total scoring average. I am maybe a touch more worried about the softness of the golf course than you might be. Because I see rain. It's so interesting. Like, it's so weird how it works for you guys across the pond and how variable the conditions are. If they played this tournament in Portrush from Sunday to Wednesday, as opposed to Thursday through Sunday, the scoring average might be 2 strokes harder. But Sunday and Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, you're getting the wind and the rain. Like Tuesday, a big practice round day, 35-mile-per-hour gusts with 22-mile-per-hour consistent wind speeds. Insane. So whatever you hear in practice rounds, it's a completely different golf course than they're going to see on Thursday, Friday. Steve, I'm looking at this right now. The biggest wind gust, and I defer to you. You are probably better at predicting weather than I am with you. Your BBC stuff is probably better than the stuff that I look at Windfinder and Windy. But like right now, even just the general forecast on Windfinder, the largest gust of wind is 8 miles per hour, 9 miles per hour for 4 days.
Yeah. The largest I see is 10, and that's on Thursday over lunchtime, and that's apparently that's the windiest it's going to be. All the wind is coming from the southwest or from the south. Yeah. So apparently, if it's a northerly wind or a northwesterly here, it plays really, really hard on the way home, but you're not even getting that wind direction. So, I don't disagree with you. I could see a 16, 18 under winning this.
It's easier scoring conditions than the 2019 Open at Portrush.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
You're watching back that video of like the final round of 2019. 2019, when it was windy and rainy and difficult, the scoring average at Portrush was 2.25. There's not going to be a day at Portrush, at least now on Friday, that is even within a stroke of that difficulty. I think you are looking at, and maybe I'm giving the architecture too much credit here, but I just look at the weather conditions of St. George's and the weather conditions of what we're going to see this week and say, I think this golf course is a little bit harder than St. George's if all things are equal. So I'm going to go scoring average. But by the way, to place in context as well, 2023 Brian Harman, where you got some tough days and some easy days. Scoring average was plus 1.43. Brian Harman won at 13 under par. So I don't think that it's not going to, I think it's kind of like a harder golf course in Liverpool, but we're not even going to get conditions as difficult as what we've seen, unfortunately, in 2023 and 2024.
No, nowhere near.
Shall we talk about the players?
Yeah, let's do that.
I think that was a very solid and informative 40 minutes on Portrush. Okay, so the players, I haven't made picks yet, so I have opinions. The picks I'm saving for the Sunday podcast. I need a little bit more time to figure out who I'm betting and stuff. Although there is one guy that I fired on, that I threw in the Discord. But talk to me about the top of the board. What is the temperature of the room for you on Rory, Scotty, and there was a big three at the U.S. Open with Bryson. I don't think he's considered a part of that big three on a links golf course.
No, you basically got the big two, and then you've got John Rahm marooned in his
number three.
Yeah, you've got Rahm just marooned in his own little 12-1 kind of area. I don't see Bryson DeChambeau winning the Open in 2025. I have to say that. Rory's talking about all of these setting of new goals now, isn't he? So he mentioned the US Open at Pebble Beach. He mentioned winning at St Andrews. I don't think he was stupid enough to say that he wanted to win the Open in his home country. Did he say that?
He did. He did, but like, I get the broader point that you're communicating.
Yeah. I don't know. In a way, I see Scotty Scheffler at 5-1. I know this sounds absolute craziness, but it almost smacks of a little bit of value. My concern with Scheffler has been this year and still remains that. I mean, I'm looking at the amount of fairways he's hitting at the Scottish Open right now as we're recording this. I still don't think he's quite as accurate as he has been at his very, very peak off the tee.
Agreed.
And that could be something that potentially derails him.
Yeah,
there was also
a better putter now, though.
There were also some moments, even at the opening round of the Scottish Open yesterday, where there was a bit of steam kind of emanating from Scotty. I don't know. It's something I need to think about in terms of Scotty. Rory, hometown boy, clearly had the course record here on the old course before the renovation. Completely and utterly blew out in 2019. Now a Masters champion, now a Grand Slam champion, now reassessed his goals. It was fascinating how he fired quite nicely Friday morning at the Scottish Open. His price is being well backed as we record this.
Played a lot better at Oakmont than people kind of not expecting, but really wanted to give him credit for. Like, he really did start to come alive and gain his confidence back in that final round at Oakmont.
I wouldn't have said this a few years ago, but he's admitted it himself, and he's admitted it to the golf betting public and the golf public in general. He has become a far better player on faster surfaces and firmer surfaces.
He is putting the freaking lights out right now at Renaissance Club. His stats at Renaissance Club are weird. He's putting and chipping his stats at Renaissance Club right now through 2 rounds are like Mackenzie Hughes stats. Like, he's losing the stroke off the tee, and he's putting his ass off.
As we record this, he's 6th for around the green, 7th for putting, and he's it's crazy. He's like
116th off the tee.
It was almost as if he was deliberately trying to make bogeys, but he just kept scrambling, and he was also using the Texas wedge a lot off of the greens, because you can do that at Renaissance. You won't be able to do that next week. No, I don't know about Rory. I'm not 100% convinced. I'm really not.
Me as well. I will say straight up, I don't know who I'm going to bet. It won't be Rory or Scotty, and I don't think I'll explore the without market. I mean, Open championships, like, you could get a pocket of wind gusts for 45 minutes when Scotty Scheffler is going through a particular stretch of holes that just kills his chances to win the tournament. So I don't know. I'm scared of Rory and Scotty. They're the best players in the field, but I don't feel compelled to bet either of them at 4-1 and 7-1. Maybe we already checked the box, Steve, of the random crazy major winner this year, and now it's going to go back to one of the elite players. But I love a card that kind of bypasses Scotty and Rory and gets started in the next tier.
This next tier is quite large as well, isn't it? Hovland, Oberg, Morikawa, Xander, Shane Lowry, Robert McIntyre, Tyrrell Hatton, DeChambeau, and Fleetwood.
Well, hey, let's also consider Rahm in that tier, because I want your take on Rahm. I do a majors preview podcast early every December. We recorded around Thanksgiving time, and I make like a, way in advance prediction for each major. And I predicted Rahm in December. And I don't know. I'll let you guys
making Open Championship predictions in December it's hard work.
Enjoy the content, but foolish. We don't expect them to be accurate.
Yeah, I'm not one for buying futures on Open Championships. I don't.
I've got a blank slate.
If there's one major I'd stay away from futures, it's the Open. The one thing that potentially might concern me about John Rahm, and I'm desperately looking right now on the system to see if I can get some numbers around it, just as someone who had him backed at Oakmont, is his accuracy off the tee. He hasn't, he was 48th for driving accuracy at Oakmont, came 7th. I would want to see some, and we've got, of course, Liv playing. They're playing at Valderrama, and apparently they're playing in particularly strong winds down in Spain over the next 3 days. If I could see something from John that said, actually, that total driving was really good. Not only was he long, but he was also really, really straight. That's something I'd be very, very interested in. And going back to the Xander model before he won last year, clearly a guy that had won the PGA Championship and then takes home the Open Championship. One thing John Rahm is doing right now, and he's doing it for fun, he's finding tons and tons and tons of greens. So if you're going down that model of someone that's going to ball strike the hell out of this golf course, and as we've said before, we said it before the US Open and the crossover between the US Open and Open Championship, kind of players that win both, Rahm has got a very, very understated Open Championship record. So yeah, I wouldn't put a pencil.
He is second and third at the two open venues that are the most like what we're going to see next week.
Yeah,
you're right about accuracy, though. I did a mini little dive into that, and he's a couple minor details off the tee right now.
Yeah,
he can get strokes off the tee with eyes closed. But the thing about Rahm that I think is nice, and you can apply this to Xander Schauffele as well. Like in my modeling this week, and you can check out the full model. It's already live and built on betsperts.com, code Inside Golf, always to get you that 25% off. To me, this is a golf course because, I bet you there's some people that are listening to our preview and saying like, okay, so off the tee matters, approach play matters. You actually have to chip well, and you also have to putt well at this golf course. Are you just saying everything matters? And what I would say is I would look at it this way, is that, there are just more pathways at this golf course. So my model is very balanced. Like I'm basically tour average approach weighting, tour average around the green weighting, a little bit higher than average on off the tee play, and a touch lower on average than putting, which is just comes naturally at the expense of off the tee. And so I think player like Xander and Rahm that are just kind of green across the board. Rahm's a great chipper of the ball. Xander's a great chipper of the ball when he's playing well. They both have some putting upside, and we know they've got great off the tee and approach numbers. Like, I think a guy who kind of just does everything well at this golf course and is super balanced is a great option, is a really great option to have, because it's not like a golf course that says to me bomb and gouge or putting contest or pure second shot golf course. Like, it's none of those things. Like, it kind of tests all skills in a somewhat equal manner, in my opinion.
I agree. An all-rounder, it will be a decent scenario for next week. I don't know about this, so taking John Rahm out of it.
Yeah, take me through the next range.
It would be absolutely typical of Tommy Fleetwood to win his first PGA Tour event at the Open in the UK. It just would be. And you know, there would be various gnashing of teeth of so many punters over the years, both this side of the pond and your side of the pond, that have backed Tommy at tournaments like the Travellers, at tournaments like the Valspar, and have seen him come up short so many times in the United States, at tournaments like the Players or the Honda Classic over the years, and finally he turns up at an Open Championship, wins his first major, and wins his first PGA Tour title in the UK. That would kind of be typical Tommy, or that is just Tommy Fleetwood in a word, I think. I'm not so sure about Tommy. The one I'm quite sweet on is Tyrrell Hatton. I do like Tyrrell.
Yeah, he's just been playing great.
He's just, I know it's locked away on live. You don't see much of it. He's consistent. It's Ryder Cup year. There's something around players that have won at least one tournament in the build up to the Open that calendar year. I think it's over 70% over the last 18 or 20 renewals. Hatton won the Dubai Desert Classic on the DP World Tour back in Jan. He's got an exceptional record on coastal linksy courses, and people will say, oh, okay, he's won the Links Dunhill Championship 3 times, and yes, that's at St Andrews, they set it up easy, blah 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 blah. Get all that, but to win that 3 times and playing Carnoustie 3 times across all of those victories, he's got a decent Open Championship record. I think Hatton is one that I'm very, very tempted to have a bet on next week. And even going back to an argument around, do you remember the one PGA Tour victory he does have in the United States? That was a very, very hard, windy, dry Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill. Yeah. He can grind, and he's got a decent short game. So I think Tyrrell Hatton's a good bet, personally.
Would you consider starting your card with Hatton at 25-1?
Yeah.
Is there like Xander, Tommy, Bob Mack at 25-1? Those are kind of not a ton of interest for you.
No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be averse to opening a card at 25s and working from there.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you one bit. I'm seeing best numbers on some of these guys for the next tier. I actually think Xander 25-1 is a good number. It's really hard to go back-to-back at Opens, but I think 25-1 on Xander is a good number. He's playing well this week at Scottish. Victor Ludwig Morikawa. 3 interesting names to me that are hovering between 28 and 35-1. Your thoughts?
We were talking about this on the podcast today that we recorded, our research podcast, which is available for listeners. Victor Hovland is one of the most frustrating people to back, and I have backed him. I've backed him so many times this year.
Yeah.
And it would just be my luck that you don't back him at the Open, and he literally fairways and greens himself into some serious contention.
By the way, almost first through 2 rounds at the Scottish, basically leading the field in approach play, dead last in around the green play.
Of course, and people say, yeah, but you guys,
Portrush is an Open where you're going to have to chip, I think, personally.
Yeah, potentially. Potentially. One thing I will say, don't forget, Shane Lowry won around here in a very windy renewal, and he hit almost 80% of greens. So it is doable. It is possible.
Totally.
Hovland could be the one that literally methodically just picks his way around this golf course, and everyone will say, well, I didn't pick Victor because he can't chip. But it's like, well, if actually he's hitting over 80% of greens anyway, that kind of puts that in the rearview mirror a little bit. I'm quite sweet on Victor. For me, there's something still not quite right about Oberg. Morikawa with his new caddy Billy Foster. That's an interesting one to look into.
Good course fit, but he's all over the map, man. Every time, I just don't have a good beat on him, Steve. Every time I think Morikawa is going to play well, he disappoints. I can't seem to figure him out. This week at the Scottish Open, man, he's riding the cut line. He's outside the cut line. He's even par on a -2 cut golf course with neutral everything. Just such like uninspiring, low energy, low passion out of this dude all year. But my numbers love him. My numbers.
Let me ask you a question then. Give me your opinion on this. 3 of the last 4 Open Championship winners have been from the United States. So who would be your number 1 United States pick for the Opens sitting here right now? Who's the guy that you think's got the best chance from an American's perspective? You might tell me Scotty Scheffler, but
Scotty Scheffler. I will tell you Scotty Scheffler. It doesn't mean I'm going to be inspired.
Yeah, who would be your second one then? A bigger price?
Xander. Xander, and I'll give you one more guy that I do quite like. One more American that I do quite like that I backed at Troon last year. And God, he couldn't make a damn thing on Sunday. But I think he's a quite good Russell Henley golf course who has just suddenly turned into a great majors player. He doesn't pop at every major, but he has been relevant, top 10 finish in 3 of his last 6 majors.
Yeah. Does fit, doesn't he? Straight off the tee. Fantastic iron player. Streaky putter.
Good chipper.
Yeah.
Real good short game.
He's as you said earlier, he's a good all-rounder.
He's really good all around. The one thing that I think worries me with him is he is short off the tee, like actually short off the tee.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a golf course. I think you can be short off the tee at this golf course and be fine. Look at the form that Russell Henley has coming in. 5th at the Memorial, 10th at the frickin' U.S. Open. By the way, those are both 7,500 yard golf courses. 2nd at the Travelers. Oh, by the way, a win at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, which is a 7,500 yard golf course.
Yeah. I get that.
I think the best American comp is Players. And he's been good there too.
Yeah.
The guy just gains around the green and on approach all the
I'm not, you might know, I'm not a Russell Henley fan, but I do follow your argument, and you cannot argue the fact that he was 5th at the Open last year, wasn't he?
Yes, but in fairness, outside of that 5th, he's been a bad Open player, but he's just a much better player now. Like, I feel like Russell Henley really came into his own. It's like he's been top 12 on data golf, top 12 to 15 on data golf for 2 years. That's a large sample size of Russell Henley being a top 12 to 15 player in the world.
I think his price, is a bit of value.
55 to 1.
Yeah. You
got to put some respect on his name. Another thing that I think we should mention with the Open Championship, I'm staying with my friend Brian Kirshner is staying with me this weekend. And, he loves to bring up the fact that he hit Brian Harman, at the 2023 Open at Liverpool, which remains a phenomenal call that I'm quite jealous of. But, Steve, he broke it down to a really he broke it down to like a really straightforward way to look at the last two opens, obviously St. Andrews is driver putter, guys that find fairways and are in good form.
Yeah.
Guys that find fairways with good iron play that are in good form. So if we think of who are guys that find fairways that are good iron players that have had a good season, right? Sepp Straka, Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Aaron Rai, players like those all feel like quite a decent bit of value for me.
No, I think so. Yeah, you've sold me on Henley. I like that bet.
Yeah.
Sepp Straka is another one that I was particularly, just he started well in Scotland. We've been mentioning him in majors all this year, haven't we?
Second at Liverpool.
Yeah, this is the point. This is the very point. So he's got a bit of open championship heritage behind him. And if you look at Straka and you look at where Straka plays well and overlay that against where Shane Lowry plays well in the United States, hell of a lot of similar golf courses. And of course, they were head-to-head at the Truist, weren't they, at Philadelphia Cricket Club?
Yeah.
Very, very similar games.
I know that Straka has bombed at majors this year. He's missed his 3 cuts at majors. And he's been popular at those majors. I'm not a Straka guy. This is the spot. This is the major for him. He's not going to play badly at all 4 majors. He's had a phenomenal season. This is the Straka spot, in my opinion.
Yeah. If you said to me, Steve, what major championship in a theoretical world does Sepp Straka win? Well, he wins an Open. Yeah.
Open, because Open is the least distance biased. It's generally the most accuracy biased.
Yeah.
And iron play is just always huge at Opens. Sometimes PGA venues like Quail Hollow this year was super driver putter. Not that it totally minimized iron play, but I break down Quail Hollow every year, and I always go driving over approach play and putting over chipping at Quail Hollow, and this is so much more balanced. So, I mean, who else should we mention? We're already at an hour, but give me 1 or 2 more guys that you're swimming around. They could be any odds.
Bigger prices.
Yeah.
That Brian Harmon 100-1 that I'm staring at looks quite large at the moment. I think this course will suit him. I want players that are fighting for Ryder Cup spots just to keep the real motivation levels going. And we know with Brian, he's fighting tooth and nail. So I like that. I think Brian Harmon at that. I'm doing for golf betting system, we always, for the Open, Paul Williams, my partner, always does the main tips. I always do longer prices, so 80-1 and out. If I can get 80-1 or above on Brian Harmon, there's no way that I won't be tipping him up for that. Who else am I interested? There's one player that I think starting to bubble a little bit, and he's got a decent kind of game for this. Tom Kim, potentially.
I like it.
He's just starting to show signs with his approach play. And we know with Tom, it all evolves around his irons and his approach play. If there's one thing that Tom Kim potentially could just fire at from out of the blue, wouldn't be surprised if it's like an Open championship. And I'm another one. Again, exactly the same as Sepp Straka. What major would Tom Kim win? It's the Open championship for me.
Yeah.
The beauty is that you know for a fact that there's going to be players at big prices at the top of the leaderboard. It's just trying to find out what ones they are. Nick Taylor's playing great golf, and I'm seeing it at 200-1.
Nick Taylor's playing amazing golf.
200-1
in Scotland. He's been awesome. 200-1's crazy high for Nick Taylor. It's a good course fit too. Like, if you look at Nick Taylor's statistical profile. Cantlay's another one. I know I'm scared to even mention the name, but like if you look at guys that have the ability to gain strokes across the board, Nick Taylor
Yeah.
When you look at putting, driving distance, driving accuracy, approach play around the green, the only thing that Nick Taylor is below average at is driving distance. He's an above average in accuracy, above average approach player, above average around the green, above average putting. That's the perfect formula that I'm looking for at Portrush. And so that's why love Nick Taylor. That's why
big price.
That's a huge price. I may bet that now.
I mean, I'm just sitting looking at the
that
Scottish
open
figures.
Though. Two open, two missed cuts.
He's in the top 20 for accuracy. He's in the top 10 for greens in reg, and he's 11th for tee to green. It's just 200 to 1. It's just I know he hasn't ever popped at a major, but I think his US Open performance was the best major finish he's had so far in his career. I just think with Nick, we know that he wins lots of tournaments on the PGA Tour, but we've always said players mature at different paces. I just think with Nick, he's getting more and more confidence that he can mix it at the highest level. I can't see a reason why Nick Taylor couldn't be competitive at an Open, and 200 to 1's crazy price.
6 top 20s in his last 7 starts, and he's T5 right now at Scottish, ranking 10th in approach play. I just bet it. I'm just going to bet the 200 now.
Yeah.
That's going to go down even just after this podcast.
I might do the same. As we switch off. Yes.
Yeah.
That's just a mad number.
That's a 200s Looney Tunes. The way he's playing. 6 top 20s in his last 7 starts. T5 right now at Scottish Open. There's very few players that are playing better golf than Nick Taylor in the world right now.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I think I'll leave it there. I think that they're the players that I've got an interest in right now. It might change, but those are the ones I've kind of put circles around right now.
I think we were dialed on Portrush, so, man, I feel good about it. You're excellent as always. No one I like talking golf with more. That's it from me. Do you have anything to plug, my friend?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your major journey in 2025. I've much appreciated it. It's always great to
love it.
I know people seem to like. They like a British voice on your show.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
if they want to come and visit me, I'm at Golf Betting on X, and of course Golf Betting System. There's the Golf Betting System podcast. We're easy enough to find. We're going to just have tons and tons of free data available as of the tournament Monday. So come and give it a look.
Cheers, my friend. Hopefully we'll be celebrating Nick Taylor. I also actually in the past have liked you joining for Ryder Cup as well. Should we have one final yearly conversation a couple of days before Bethpage?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I can be Team Europe cheerleader.
It's a fun Ryder Cup with some
fun. It could be some twists and turns. Yeah.
Totally agree. All right, Steve. That already brightens my day that this isn't our last chat for a while. So we'll talk soon, my friend. And I will certainly be sending a giddy message your way if Nick Taylor is towards the top of the leaderboard come Sunday at Portrush.
Thanks, Andy. Take care.
Cheers, Steve.